Of the bioeconomy, people, planet, policies. To give us an overview on global strategies, we invite Dr. Christian Patterman, who's been on screen for a while. Christian is the father of the European bioeconomy. He was the former director of the European Commission, and he is advisor for the German government on bioeconomy matters. Christian, you are in charge of this whole session. So I give you the word now.
Now I'd like to talk to you about the overview on recent biostrategies worldwide as a kind of intermezzo. And I start with looking backwards. Here you have, for the first time ever, the definition of a bio-based economy when it appeared 16, 17 years ago in a footnote of an official document of the OECD. Dear friends and colleagues, if you look at that, you'll find that all the ingredients we talk today have already been in. Renewability, biological resources, efficient bioprocesses, industrial eco-clusters, and also, as the governor said, bioproducts, jobs, and incomes. And by the way, until today, we do not know which delegation in this important conference in January 2004 had introduced this footnote. That's quite interesting. The next slide, please. And I'm going to talk to you now very briefly about, for all those who are not that familiar with the bioeconomy here all over the world, in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, you know, what are the main subjects of it? And the last 16 years, we had 4 pillars, not also always in the the World Bioeconomy Forum, but also in the bioeconomy. The exploitation of biological resources, the integration of new knowledge. That's why we called it at the beginning the knowledge-based bioeconomy, in particular looking on technologies and scientific disciplines, but it will change. I think Belém will open the door for an introduction of indigenous traditional knowledge to be added to the normal scientific and technological knowledge, which is an enabling way to be used also in the bioeconomy in a way of integration. And the third pillar is that in a growing way, we are contributing to biological and digital transformation. Very, very important developments we were not thinking about when we started with it 2004 and 2005. And the last point, new partnerships and interactions when we want to achieve SDGs, but also when we want to enable the circular economy, which has not been that much talked about here during the last 1.5 hours. The next slide, please. And what is very important is to recall, you know, why are we using biological resources? Why are they so popular in the bioeconomy? And why are they the basis for a new business or economy model? There are, again, 4 points. It's first of all renewability. But then also, let's make that very, very clear. It is also the fact that we have a certain CO2 friendliness moving into the direction of climate neutrality if we do it rightly. And the third part is potential reuse or multi-use in the format of cascades or cycles. That means from the very beginning, we had the circularity element within the biological resources to be a very favorable feature of it. And last but not least, don't forget, we talk about a bioeconomy. And for that reason, new and maybe better products are extremely essentials. The biological resources will offer really potentials for new and better function. It could be a longer life of a product. It could be a higher stability, less or no toxicity, less water use or energy, or also a stronger endurance. That's what the European Commission lately was qualifying as bio-based innovation. So next slide, please. I'd like to sum up. We have a few USPs, unique selling points of the bioeconomy, which makes them a little different or very strongly different also from other business or economy models. More than any other business models we have today, the bioeconomy is a value-based, enabling value economy. It is centered around adding value within value chains, and it's appreciating the natural capital as the fundament of the concept. And as I said, there is also this wonderful aptness and potential for integrating knowledge from various scientific and technological disciplines, but also, and I'm sure that this is a new movement coming from this important meeting, also opening the door for traditional knowledge and indigenous one. Next slide, please. We have a green word now. The greener the color is, the more decisively you find there a dedicated bioeconomy policy and strategy to be existing in these countries. And I like to give you a small rundown, next slide please, as well. On the last year, where we had new strategies, we have now more or less 61, 62 all over the world, in all continents. And last year we had a few new ones: Germany, Costa Rica, the East African Union, German states like Bavaria, and also Colombia. And Uruguay has published its strategy just a few months ago, and Catalonia in the Basque region did it just a few weeks ago. Portugal, just preparing a dedicated bioeconomy action plan. We will all hear a lot about that later on. And Namibia and the People's Republic, it's in the pipeline. It's interesting that the People's Republic, in its new 4 or 5 years plan, clearly talks about to make the bioeconomy bigger and stronger. And we'll see what will come out in practice in a few weeks on that. The next slide, please. Austria is having a lot of extremely interesting projects in the implementation. North Rhine-Westphalia, a powerhouse of industry in Germany, is just publishing cornerstone papers. And Finland, the host, which has been named already quite a few times today, this country is just updating its strategy of 2014. And last but not least, we have, for the first time, a very strong multilateral movement in favor of the bioeconomy worldwide in the last 6 to 8 months. Why? The G20 meeting in Rome in July, for the first time ever, had a workshop on the bioeconomy with all those member states who are owning already their dedicated strategy. And the United Nations Food System Summit, which has not at all mentioned, I was a little astonished about that, in September of this year. It's included the One Health principle after pandemic, and also the bioeconomy in its agenda as one of the 3 or 4 priorities on the science agenda. And dear friends, this meeting, the World Circular Bioeconomy Forum here in Brazil, is part of this movement in which the multilateral activities have gained momentum. Next slide, please. Let me very briefly recall what the role of Latin America was when we started with this 17 years ago, when I was touring the world on behalf of our Commissioner Potocnik. Brazil and Argentina were playing a very important role. And I recall the meetings I had with Embrapa and also Itamaraty here in 2005, when I was even invited for a so-called South-South cooperation project between Brazil, the Republic of South Africa, and India, where already 16, 17 years ago, we were discussing the bioeconomy, dear friends. 16, 17 years ago. Unfortunately, today, we have not yet, by the state of Brazil and Argentina as well, an own dedicated strategy. But you have a lot of activities, and I hope very much that from this conference will be a push towards other areas of Brazil, other regions that you come up with a comprehensive national strategy. And Para evidently is going to lead this movement for the time being. We had, during the last 12 to 14 months, a kind of wake up in the Latin American continent. It started with Costa Rica, it then is continuing with Colombia and Uruguay, and now we'll see what are the other Latin American states to join. In Puerto Rico, it wasn't very successful, and also Ecuador is still in the pipeline. So again, I think that this meeting should be a trendsetter for that. But interestingly enough, please, the next slide, please. There are differences in content, and that's very good. As one of the opening speakers said this morning, there is no one for all bioeconomy, but there are many bioeconomies around, and that's good. In Europe, we talk very much about circularity. We talk also about agriculture parts of that. We talk about the integration of new knowledge, and particularly scientific and technologies. But here in Latin America, it's more the biodiversity. It's stronger than ever health, and also socio-economic aspects, and particularly inclusion, which will play a role. And let's join these movements all over the world and find out the best one for that. I very much hope that we will listen to much more on that during the next 2 days. The next slide, please. Now, we had the pandemic, and we cannot deny it. We cannot ignore it. There are a few trends which we can already track or trace back from the pandemic. First of all, I think clearer than ever before, we have strategies which are strongly and much more oriented towards action. And I hope very much that this will also be the case for the Para strategy. The new strategies we are going to hear about in 1 or 2 hours, they are much more accountable. They have much more money also for implementation than the strategies 6 or 7 years ago. And that is extremely good. And we must also, and that is one of the lessons of the pandemic, focus much more on dedicated pressure groups, not just the concerned citizen in the street. No, but going to teachers, going to industrialists, going to investors, going to influencers, going to kids. And I'd like to show you this book here, which has just been published by the European Union, more than 25,000 copies in 8 languages, and one language is Portuguese. Okay, la bioeconomia. So, let's change, the pattern of communication in this way and go more straightforward to those who are really moving. And another point, which I think is extremely important. During the competition of systems to cope with the challenges of tomorrow, the bioeconomy has gained momentum. It has gained momentum because it has this particular link towards or between economy and nature. And for that reason, we can have a very good pole position, but it's up to us to use that. And it will not, if I may say so, be sufficient if we just declare on paper or in academic terms what is good. We need to have plausible, concrete arguments of concrete cases to show and demonstrate why it is much more preferable to have a bio-based product or a bio-based solution. And here I very, very strongly hope to get new initiatives, to get new knowledge, to get new ideas and hints from the Latin American continent, and Amazonia should play there a very important role. The next and last slide, please. I'm very eager with my colleagues, and I'm very curious to hear from you during the next 2 days across the oceans what you can offer. Thank you very much for your very kind attention, and see you in a few moments again. So can I give the floor back Flora.
Oh, Christian.
Yes, I think
Okay,
now Isabella takes care.
right.
Good morning, all. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to address you. I would like to greet you also on behalf of my colleague Mercedes. It is a great pleasure for me. Unfortunately, I cannot be physically present, but I would like to talk about the dimension of the challenge to create in Brazil, and especially in the Amazon, a new route for the economy. The new relations with the environment are in line with contemporaneous tendencies. Circular economy and regenerative economy are strategic in the current sustainable development era. The international tendency on sustainability for the last 2 years and during this transition, including the climate change discussion and also in preparation for COP27, and the conference in June next year, Stockholm plus 50, 50 years after the world gathered to discuss, urged by Brazil, this new context of development. So a year from now, we shall be together to discuss all of this again. This is the political context, and some issues deserve to be highlighted here. First of all, the importance of nature. Common logic teaches us that we have to create without destroying. We need a movement of solidarity, which is what guides this new global vision based right now on new challenges due to the global pandemic and also the problems we are facing with degradation and pollution. So we have to discuss the importance of bioeconomy for the future, and that this cannot be denied. This new course is essential for what was mentioned in terms of the need to find new ways to evolve, the importance of democratic posture, including all, requiring innovative arrangements, not only in the international or regional levels, as was mentioned, but a new perspective in a relationship that will be not just North and South, but also East and West. It is important to understand the dynamics because countries with biodiversity, such as Brazil, are strategic and responsible for a very important role. And I am certain that Professor Bustamante will mention this. Another important point in our discussions, besides the democratic dimension, is that we have to underline the role of science as a political player and an economic player at the same time. And the transition, well, the pandemic has to be taken into account, but obviously we have to create the space where science will generate not just knowledge, but also solutions for the future of all countries in the world. It was an excellent idea to organize this meeting in the Amazon. It was Brazil who decided to hold the ECO 92 meeting in Rio. And a few years ago, or 30 years ago, Brazil organized a very ambitious program to know how to deal with economic issues respecting the environment of the Amazon. We have 60 million hectares of forest, which doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. And all of this is part of Brazil's trajectory. Issues are not just short term. I understand that Brazil, since '92, has been progressing in this trajectory of an affirmative action concerning the environment. In this decision to fight against deforestation in the Amazon, we include the engagement of Brazilian society, the non-acceptance of illegal deforestation, and significant progress has been made so far. It's not a matter of legal or illegal deforestation. Science shows that there is no room for this type of discussion. We have to progress in this field, and we have to build actions that will promote sustainable development, having in mind local needs. And this type of attitude will be from bottom up. And this was discussed in Paris. We have to work on the climate issue, but we must also work on the strategy to care for local communities. If the one hand, Brazil has a retrocess in the issue of deforestation, the other side is also important, which are the progresses that can be seen. The mobilization, the national mobilization, not just in the Amazon region. And obviously, the commitment to a green economy, not just by IBA and others, but we have to give signs that economic solutions require scale, they require connections in time, and they require adequate treatment. One third item is the political maturity. We have mobilization for new paths to be adopted, coalitions, consultation, the forest, the Amazon, but we also have the recognition that it is necessary to care for forest and Amazon dwellers in general. And all of these aspects now coincide here in Belém, to be discussed here in Brazil, in Belém, also to look at new paths. International cooperation is changing, spaces are changing, and in my point of view, it is essential for this issue to be dealt from two points of view: preservation and climate change. So these are the two aspects that, in a way, give balance to this international concern. We have not just to protect the Amazon and the forest, but we must also promote the realignment of Brazil with a sustainable position to really stand up to social inequalities. It seems to me that this meeting is essential, first of all, for us to be winners in this process. We need a realignment in the schedule, and here the role of the public sector is of utmost importance. Not just the government needs to combat deforestation, but also it needs to have public policies and regulations which may bring short-term solutions, but they, in a way, postpone the end of deforestation in the Amazon. So this needs to be analyzed. This analysis is essential by the public sector. The private sector right now has the demand of international markets and the chain of commodities. And as new chains are discussed that are linked to the Amazon, it is important to design a strategy avoiding domination relations. This is important not just for this transition, but also for the long-term prospect, because here we have science working on time schedules, and surely we shall talk about this very properly. We have to belong to the planet and we have to be local at the same time. This brings in a new political perspective. And how is it that we are connected globally to the economy? And we are all connected by climate vulnerabilities. And this is why discussions involving the Amazon are relevant and strategic, because science may be applied already in the present. and no longer as if we could postpone all this for the future. The role is not just the fixation of carbon. Without the Amazon, it won't be 1.5 degrees in the climate. This political symbiosis, this geopolitical symbiosis is very important to be taken into account. And here in Pará, we shall mention how the strategy of the government of Pará is linked to the global climate strategy. This alignment seems extremely relevant to me for the discussion to change levels. The regional and political driver is also important. The Treaty of Amazon Cooperation is important for us to be able to work on this as a political bloc. And this is how we are going to have a dialogue with the future. This is how nature and people in the Amazon will be taken care of. The bioeconomy was mentioned in the opening session, and looking at the Amazon, it is important to understand how tropical countries can have bioeconomies in their territories. It is important for that to understand the importance of the agribusiness in these countries. They tell tales of the past that did not bring in the future, but we have to understand current circumstances, and these societies must be mobilized to change in order to develop remunerative economies, bioeconomies. We have to stop and see that we have to see how bioeconomy can fit in these various territories that are still preserved. We have a converted Amazon where you have economic activities, agribusiness, animal husbandry. And this is different from the forest, the Amazon forest. And we have the urban Amazon, which adopts the logic of circularity to the urban sector. In this context, then, we can admit, as Marcelo Brito said, we can admit the bioeconomy. They are not isolated things. This is a process and a new political power in the Amazon in Brazil. I believe we have to work creatively to understand what can be done and to understand that decisions must be made now. In politics, you always have two sides. You're either siding with the problem or siding with the solution. And in Brazil, we are going to side with solutions in order to build a better country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Isabella Teixeira. And I would like to invite Mercedes Bustamante. She is a professor at the University of Brasilia.
Mercedes, very, very welcome.
I'm very pleased to have been invited. It's a pleasure to share. Her sound is really bad. Well, we have different challenges, and Isabella mentioned them. I would like to focus
Então, como colocar o objetivo é discutir pouco da bioeconomia no contexto da
Now, I would like to speak about the bioeconomy in the context of the Amazon. The initiative united more than 200 scientists and indigenous people
horizontal, processo participativo de construção dessa visão para a Amazônia, procurando engajar diferentes visões e valores.
with the different visions and insights. A little bit about the narrative of this presentation currently. How did we make it until here, and where do we want to go? What is available for this? It's important for us to say this context that we live here, that everything is very interrelated. The Amazon and the ecosystems very often they're irreversible situations and catastrophic. This is a narrow window of opportunity to change this trajectory, like Isabella said. It's important. It's not a mission for tomorrow, it's a mission for today. If we look at the solutions in the systems, the Amazon is important for the global climate as well. And it is a home to notable biological and cultural diversity. Now, the resilience of the Amazonian ecosystem is dependent on the complex interactions of extraordinary potential. Here we see the Amazon, that we consider the basin as a whole, and even the lowlands. All the strategies, we have to have this altitudinal connectivity for the conservation of the Amazon. A little bit of this diversity. It's easy to see that we have here biocultural diversity and sustainability. Here you can see, and besides the trees, we have other biological groups. This enormous cultural diversity, this involves governance, to know the situation of the indigenous that we have in the Amazon, and also the urban populations. This is just an example of this wealth and biodiversity that shows how the indigenous languages, if we lose them, we might lose all the information of medicinal plants. If we compare the three regions, North America, Northwest Amazon, and New Guinea, we can see that the Amazon, they know the traditional medicine that is associated only to one language. So we mustn't lose the language of the indigenous population. We have to relate the scientific to traditional knowledge and the cultural diversity of the Amazon. The Amazon also has a role that goes beyond its frontiers with the transport and the biosphere and the transport to irrigate the south of Brazil, where large-scale agricultural happens. A global component of the cycle, of the carbon cycle, still works as important drains for carbon, but recent studies shows that there are certain areas of the Amazon that the degradation and deforestation were very important, that these are a net sink, a carbon sink. So this process of degradation and deforestation currently shows us important numbers. We have 17% of the Amazon region, which has been deforested, must 17% in process of degradation. And we see here the expansion of the areas that are submitted to continuous fires in the Amazon basin. So basically, we are moving from this graph of a forest to the increase, the so-called forests of the border, and we will then finish with the degradation and deforestation. It's important to mention that it was mentioned here, the pandemic of COVID-19, how this has affected the chains of supply around the world and the potential that this forest may have, this situation may have on human health. There are very enormous number of projects that show the difference, the problems of viruses, zoonosis, deforestation, bringing human beings close to these regions, and there might be a spillover to the people that are moving into these areas. And we mustn't forget the particulate material that is polluting the atmosphere, that affects not only the Amazon population, but also the populations that are not in the Amazon region, and that also suffer with the transcontinental degradation. So all these pressures and responses due to deforestation, successive fires in association to the global climate change, and this has, we have measured and has been quantified changes in the carbon cycle in the region, changes and impact on human health. Some regions, so-called to the point of inflection, the forest would be in a new state of balance because it bring back the humid forest that we knew. How can we stop this spiral of degradation? Well, one important part of this panel of the Amazon is the construction of this vision. How can we implement a transition fair and equitable for the region? And here we put multiple dimensions that are interconnected. These multiple interconnected dimensions are going to be shown in a more detailed way. The first aspect of this to be more equitable is to give more power to the indigenous and local people's rights to be recognized and protected. So they would have their rights protected and their livelihood and well-being preserved. And also the different dialogues with the participation of science, and Isabel mentioned how science is important, and an intercultural education that can be capable of promoting a capacity of this population in an accessible way, and that will generate diversity and equitable gender. It's also important in this to be fair and equitable is to protect the indigenous land. And I'm going to mention a few. One is in 2016, we have the Network of Origins of Brazil network, a network of Brazilian origins launched in 2016. They have different activities. They have trade and commerce with 43 protected areas with trading activities and many indigenous areas protected. Secondly, is the conservation and restoration through a network of protected area effectively managed, where innovative approaches for conservation and restoration can be implemented. And environmental changes are already happening, and this affects not only the land, but also water, aquatic, and terrestrial ecosystems. So the main message is the maintenance of resilience, connectivity in the Amazon. We have examples of how the restoration can be a chain of business that can be important for the region. One is called the Seed Network of Xingu, which is they work in the trade of seeds. More than 250 tons have been sold, and 220 native species involving more than 500 people, mainly the Indians, the local indigenous community. Another example is in the restoration of the Amazon. Here is a map where you see the different points where there are models of restoration that have been tested in this basin and also in this region that I mentioned that we have the best possibility of finding this point of inflection. So it's important to see this network of points. Another important pillar of this transition is the bioeconomy for healthy forests. So this implies in inclusive models for the use of biological resources by means of the exchange and connection between scientific and indigenous local knowledge and with local markets organized and sharing benefits. So this would bring equitable development of rural and urban economies. When we study these cases of the Amazon region, there are so many sustainable cases based on biodiversity. It's difficult to choose one of them, but I look at the aquatic ones, the water ones, and others. But it's important for us to highlight in the initiatives now that are ongoing in the Amazon, some key messages in the panel. The Amazon region is still far from the scientific and technological frontier for a contemporary bioeconomy. So it needs a bioeconomy driven by science and technology and innovation. And the tropical forests now represent this opportunity for reducing the gap between scientific and technological frontiers. And for this, it's important to acknowledge this information that exists with the forest people for millions of years. And this is key to value the social biodiversity central to bioeconomy. Forest people are also holders of spiritual material culture that is so important to maintain the forest and ecosystem services, which are so essential for life on the planet. Therefore, they are essential players for a fair and rich bioeconomy in the Amazon. Another important aspect as a key message is that the bioeconomy is more than economic sector. It synthesizes a set of ethical normative values on the relationship between society and nature and their consequences. It has to be guided towards regeneration of biotic material and energy sources on which we all depend. It also provides immense opportunities. And finally, this bioeconomy based on biodiversity and the sustainable use of forests is broad and diverse. So it can involve activities of the forest people, family farming, and also marked by land uses with rich biodiversity and commodity agriculture focused on the production of grain and meal, which is so important for the ecosystems. And it also stands out in the context of growing global attention. As Isabella also mentioned, I would like to talk about this coordination between the political forces in the Amazon in search of alternatives to change this predatory form of development. However, I am now wrapping up. We have some barriers that have to be overcome. The first one is to think that to change the design and implementation of the infrastructure of the region, we cannot have a bioeconomy based on the infrastructure, which is still based on non-sustainable principles. So this infrastructure that's going to serve the bioeconomy has to be green, high quality, without generating any more impact in the environment, and also to have investments in resources for the institutions with international collaboration, with investment in science and technology. We are living a moment with very little funds for science and art and the environment. Also, the last slide that I would like to show you has to do with the forest defenders under threat. It's important to remember the Global Witness Report. It registered a record number of activists of environmental defenders that were murdered. They were working to defend the world's forests and deforestation in Brazil and Peru. They respond for 3/4 of these recorded attacks in focusing on the indigenous population in the Amazon region. So this demands immediate action so that we can build the new economy for the region. In these analyses that we made, who is in charge, who is in the government, who is going to be the leaders, and who lives in the Amazon regions for it to be sustainable. And this governance is essential in the fair and equitable transformation, with some messages with the deforestation, forest degradation, and the policies have to be based on the knowledge and with civil society participation, and with the guarantee of financial resources for sustainability. Only with a multilateral Amazon coordination are we going to be able to stop the illegal activities in the Amazon. And so in summary, the sustainable Amazon, so that the forest can be restored and maintained, economies built on the foundation of healthy forests, live trees, rivers flowing, and regional societies. And I would like to close here and take this opportunity to tell you about the afternoon panel with the scientists that are going to be involved in the discussion about the bioeconomy in the Amazon. Thank you for your attention. Well, thank you very much, Mercedes.
As we heard earlier on this morning, it's a bioeconomy, it's about reconciling development and conservation. Having said that, we now have a short documentary, 3 minutes, about the pirarucu management. So it's the biggest fish in the Amazon, and it's a great opportunity for local communities to increase their income while working to preserve the nature. So we have this 3 minutes video, and then I will call on the panel. Thank you. Vídeo de 3 minutos sobre o pirarucu.
A 3-minute video on this enormous fish that exists only in the Amazon called pirarucu.
Desde quando eu nasci, que eu me formei com uma idade de 10 anos, eu comecei a pescar. Agora eu já me aposentei, né, e fico brigando comigo. Agora que não tem que já descansar, já tá velho, já. Não, mas de qualquer maneira eu gosto muito de pescar, que foi meu ramo, né.
Em primeiro lugar, é cultivar a pesca. Segundo lugar, o manejo que a gente faz, né, que é de primeira qualidade. A gente entramos num projeto em 2002, né, para manejar pirarucu na comunidade.
A Sapopema, ela realizou assessoramento técnico junto a essas comunidades. Aqui no Baixo Amazonas são 7. Nosso trabalho é em parceria com os pescadores, né, em vários setores, tanto acompanhando ele na parte de gestão do território como um todo, no acompanhamento
da construção dos acordos de pesca dele.
Mas o importante é que o estoque pesqueiro nas comunidades que estão desenvolvendo o manejo aumentou. Então hoje você já tem uma produção de pirarucu significativa para aumentar o estoque pesqueiro no ecossistema natural. Então a proposta do manejo nessas comunidades, elas cumprem vários papéis. O da sustentabilidade do ecossistema local, e elas também cumprem o papel na mudança da dinâmica econômica. É por isso que para a bioeconomia, essa experiência ela tem um papel fundamental.
Porque na época do meu avô, né, eles matavam os peixes de filho. Hoje em dia a gente não mata, a gente maneja eles, a gente confere eles, quantos tem, quantos casais tem, onde eles estão, as margens que eles estão.
Eles que têm que fazer a fiscalização, eles têm um custo adicional muito alto da própria comunidade. Então, essa experiência, ela deveria ter uma compensação ambiental para as comunidades que desenvolvem o manejo.
Esses pescadores, eles realizam a vigilância dos ambientes aquáticos na comunidade. Então, durante o ano, eles têm uma agenda de visitas pontuais, né, em alguns lagos estratégicos, para evitar a ação de invasores e atividade de pesca ilegal.
Em janeiro para fevereiro, nós já começamos a ter as equipes de 12, 13, fica 6 aqui, 5 lá, e assim. Porque, você sabe, nós preserva para o outro vir destruir. E eu me sinto feliz de trabalhar com pirarucu, cuidar, contar e pescar aí.
Eu amo pescaria porque se nós não zelar, se a gente não preservar, a gente não tem nada. Porque hoje em dia nós temos muita riqueza aqui nos nossos lagos, é devido à nossa preservação.
Que maravilha! Que maravilha! Let me... Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I would like now to call to the panel, to the screen, and also to the stage. So Arturo Luna, Ignacio Rodrigues Galindo, Julius Ekuru, Nur Idiavati Raya, and Marisa Lameiras da Silva. And Marisa, please come on stage. You're the only one on stage. I hope you don't feel lonely. And don't worry, we're here with you. And thank you so much for being physically with us today. I just want to remind quickly the online audience, if you want to ask questions, please just press the button located below the screen. Para os que estão aqui na sala, se tiverem perguntas, pedi-lhes que as escrevessem num papel, que estão nos vossos sacos, levantassem a mão e alguém virá recolher as vossas perguntas que serão depois transmitidas. À boa maneira antiga. Christian, please. Now it's really your turn. Thank you.
Come on. Well, good afternoon here. Well, I hear my sound again. Could that be stopped, please? Thank you very much, dear Teresa. We now start with our first session after a rather inspiring morning in Belém with, as I said before, high class and high level contributions. And within the last two contributions, I strongly appreciated the very concrete statements which Mercedes made, and I think there will be some food and maybe wood for thought for us later on. Now, we are in the first panel, and the first panel, which is People, Planet, Policies, has a long tradition, if I may say so, within the World Bioeconomy Forum, if you might talk about a forum which only exists for years. We started from the very beginning, and we had speakers in our sessions from China to the United States, from Germany, Austria to Uruguay, from North Karelia, from Bavaria, from the Basque country, etc., but also representatives from giants like the European Union or the World Meteorological Organization of FAO. And it was always that these contributions reflected the tremendous dynamism of the bioeconomy worldwide, which we still note, which might even accelerate. We were discussing one meeting, the urban bioeconomy to emerge, or the other one was the SDG achievements or the Paris climate goals, lignocellulosic for textile, or also alternate proteins. And here in BLM, we will add very strongly, as has been clearly set out before, the role of tropical forests, not boreal ones, but tropical forests, biodiversity, question of inclusion, and also indigenous knowledge, which I am very, very, very impressed what we hear from that. This is not that much a topic in Europe. There is only in Finland, the Sami people in North Laponia, where we might talk about indigenous people. So that is really good to enrich our discussion. And then the third point was also very practical. In all the meetings we had before, we always looked as well on impediments and obstacles. The world is not always a wishful concert. It is also having a lot of problems to be taken over and overcome. And therefore, we wanted also, and we will this time also try to formulate some carry-home messages for all of you who are not wasting our time staying with us, but can have some good lessons to be learned. So let's immediately start in our travel around the world, and this is the most cosmopolitan panel we had in the World Bioeconomy Forum before. Let's start with a neighbor country, with Colombia. And I'm very happy, bienvenido Arturo Luna. He is a biologist. He has studied, as a matter of fact, in Colombia, but he was a Fulbright scholar, and he has a PhD in the University of Tennessee. And he is, since February last year, the coordinator of the bioeconomy program in the Colombian Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. Arturo, tú tienes la palabra. Somos muy curiosos de escuchar que tú vas a decirnos.
Thank you, Christian. It's a pleasure to be here at this event and to share with you what we're doing here in Colombia in terms of the bioeconomy mission. If you allow me, I can share my screen real quick and show you. Please confirm.
Yeah.
Okay. Last year, after almost a year of work, we launched the Colombia's National Bioeconomy Mission. So it's almost a year of work implementing, but also building the action plan around this bioeconomy mission. Our goal is to promote the socioeconomic development of the country, but taking into account that Colombia is a country of regions. And we want to use the resources we have, like biomass, biodiversity, and ecosystem services to generate new products and processes with high added value, using science, technology, and innovation as a catalyst. This is a dedicated bioeconomy strategy that we are working on right now. We took the mission-oriented approach with a big challenge that is to generate sustainable growth for biodiverse, productive, and equitable Colombia, taking into account that Colombia is really biodiverse, is the second most biodiverse country in the planet after Brazil. And what we want with this is to improve the living conditions of the people, but using the resources in a really sustainable manner. One of the goals is to that the bioeconomy contributes 10% of the GDP of the country by 2030. And the way we are approaching this mission is taking into account 5 great challenges.
We can hardly hear you.
You could go on, and Arturo, if you could really get as you were. Yeah?
I would suggest, Arturo, can you hear us? Could you put your earheads again in and then try it again? No.
No. No. No. You muted somewhere.
You're muted.
You somewhere you muted. We were listening so well to you.
Okay, then.
Please. Yeah.
Flora, can I ask you the bilateral try to remedy it, and we go to Ignasi Rodriguez, if you permit me. And I'm going to, that's very, very bad and very, very sad, you know, because Colombia has a lot to offer. Now let's then move to Ignasi. Ignasi from Barcelona. Ignasi from Barcelona. He is a forest engineer, and he has enormous knowledge also on business and management, master degree in public management. And he has been very, very active in the field of natural resources management, a specialist on forestry, and has been a key figure in working out the new local or regional strategy of the autonomous region of Catalonia, which was just released a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So tú tienes también la palabra y espero bien que el sueno será mejor.
Muchas gracias, Christian. Thank you very much. I'm trying to share my presentation. I don't know if you can see it okay. It's okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much, Christian, and thank you to all the organizers of the World Bioeconomy Forum for having invited us to share with you our experience and what's more important for us, to learn of all your experiences. I will begin only with one slide to present you, to introduce you to Catalonia. Catalonia is a region located in the northeast of Spain, or if you prefer it, in the southwestern Europe. Its total surface is about 32,000 square kilometers. That is 40 times less than Pará, but it has more or less the same population. I think that Pará is about 8 million inhabitants, so Catalonia is 7.5 million inhabitants. Catalonia's economy is based on industry and services, with a very powerful tourism sector, while agriculture and livestock accounts only for 1% of the total GDP. However, 1/3 of the total surface of Catalonia is agricultural area, and almost 2/3 are forested area. With that, you can see that there's a huge potential for bioeconomy, but nowadays there are few facts in bioeconomy. So it was necessary to have a bioeconomy strategy for Catalonia. What is for us bioeconomy? We accept all the definitions, but what we put in our definition is the adjective local. The previous speaker, Arturo, has said that for them it was important to look from and for the regions. We are the region. I represent here the region. And we think that it's very important for us to focus on local renewable resources. We think that our strategy has to solve local problems and have to take advantage of local opportunities. So that's the definition for us, but we accept, of course, all the definitions that are in the field of the bioeconomy. Why do we think that it's important to have a bioeconomy strategy at the regional, at the local level? Okay, there are many reasons, but we have our own motto. Our motto is, we want things to happen, and things are not happening. Level in the fields of food production, rural agenda, circular economy, but there's still a gap. There's still something, barriers that has to be solved. We have found a lot of stakeholders and have not been able to come into contact. There are a lot of resources that must to be mobilized. We need things to happen. And what do we want? What do we so we want to profit that opportunity to stimulate the development of rural areas, the creation of quality jobs, to build landscapes more resilient, etc., etc. It's for all that reason that we thought that it was important. I'm trying to stick to the time. it was important to have our own strategy. And to achieve all those goals, and following, of course, some basic and mandatory principles of action, circularity, sustainability, contribution to the climate change mitigation, we have made a very, very simple strategy. And I have, again, to thank Christian Paterman, because he has helped us a lot on writing our strategy. And he has recommended us to make a very, very simple strategy, but I think a very useful strategy. So our strategy is based on 7 different objectives. 4 of them are strategic objectives linked to the generation of economic activity, and 3 more are transversal objectives. The first one is to improve the use of biomass through the characterization, quantification, and optimization of its management and the distribution. If we want new activity to be generated, we need users to have access to biomass in sufficient quantity and quality and without interruption. So this is our first objective. The second objective is to develop a business community based on the circular economy throughout all the territory, and paying special attention to the primary sector. Of course, we want new activities to emerge, but also we want, or especially we want, to consolidate and transform existing activities. And what's more important, to help the different stakeholders to find better ways to get in touch. Our third objective is to encourage the use and consumption of bioproducts, bioenergy, and biomaterials on the market. We want to generate consumption for bio-based products using many mechanisms, among the other mechanisms, for instance, the public purchasing. Our fourth objective is to promote resilient, maybe this one is the most innovative aspect of our strategy, is to promote resilient agricultural and forest landscapes and the sustainable provision of ecosystem services. We want to help the bioeconomy to manage all those spaces that need to be managed properly, of course. We believe that the bioeconomy can give us new and useful tools to generate activity in this space, in these lands, ensuring their sustainability and the offer of environmental services. So those were the four first objectives, and then we have 3 other objectives that we call them the facilitating goals, that they are of a cross-disciplinary nature. The first one is to situate, as Mercedes Bustamante has said, their knowledge as a motor of the circular bioeconomy. We have to identify the main challenges on which research should be focused and support research centers. I think that there's already a very powerful network of research centers in Catalonia, but help those research centers to make progress in the field of bioeconomy. Oh, sorry. Can you see my presentation? No?
So is this a finish?
No. I was trying, I think. I was okay.
Now
okay?
we see it now, objective
Yes.
6, yes.
Okay, yes. Objective 6 is to strengthen the role of the administration and adapt the regulatory framework to favor the circular bioeconomy in Catalonia. I think that we need to review some possible regulatory barriers, often due to the lack of foresight of these emerging activities, because bioeconomy is still an emerging activity. And the last one, also a suggestion of Christian, is to prepare the Catalan society for the change toward the circular bioeconomy. To do this, we need to know which are the opportunities, and we need to share and to show the society how bioeconomy can contribute to a more sustainable development model. I have more slides, but I think that my time is over. And maybe later I can share with you some more information, and I will send also my presentation if you want to. They can. Someone wants to read it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very, very much for your excellent presentation in Nuche. And I think everyone who is looking at that will see the commonalities and similarities to the forestry orientation in this regional strategy, where indeed, I think Amazonia might also have some lessons to learn and vice versa. So it would be wonderful if this conference could be the beginning of a small cooperation between the two regions of Para and Catalonia. We now come to the third speaker. I'm going back to Arturo Luno a little later, whether everything is fine, but we come now to Africa. And it's the first time that in our panels, we have someone from Africa appearing. So Julius, we give you a very hearty welcome. Julius Ekuru comes from Kenya. He comes from Nairobi, and he is a doctor in regional science and innovation, and he is the boss of the Bioinnovative Africa initiative, which tries to have an East African Union, you know, the bioeconomy to be growing and more growing. And this initiative is indeed in the center of insect physiology and ecology in Nairobi. And we are very keen on knowing what Julius is going to tell us after the East African Union published a few months ago its first African strategy on regional basis from the southern Sudan and Ethiopia down to Tanzania. You have the floor, Julius.
Thank you, Christian, and hello to you, everyone. Warm greetings from Nairobi in Kenya. I'm very pleased to be participating in the session of the World Bioeconomy Forum. And Christian, it's great to know that this is the first time you're having an African. And to me, this is good history in the making. So thank you so much. So in Eastern Africa, we just had our brand new bioeconomy strategy. It's a regional one, and it's the first one in Africa. And we say it is the second globally after the European Union. So this region of Eastern Africa comprises a community of 6 countries at the moment. So we have Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan. But our initiative also works in Ethiopia, and now we are also getting into the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is like the Amazon of Africa. We have more than 300 million people in this region, and then with a GDP of about 400 billion. So that's about 1/5 of the GDP of Brazil, and maybe twice the population of Brazil. But more than 65% of this population live in rural areas, and they depend directly on biological resources, you know, for their medicine, for their food, for their fuel, and other uses. Agriculture alone contributes about 33% of the region's GDP. So I think that gives you the context of this region of Eastern Africa. So the discussion about building a sustainable bioeconomy started as an academic and policy inquiry around about 2010, or maybe slightly earlier. And at that time, we had recognized 3 important trends, but which were also a bit worrying. The first issue we recognized was that agroprocessing or bioprocessing was suboptimal. That is to say, not much value added. And every harvest, every produce, there was a lot of wastage. And even the agro-processing that was taking place was heavily polluting the environment. So a lot of bio-waste was being generated and causing problems in urban communities especially. Number two was we also recognized that bioscience was rapidly advancing globally. We started investing so much in, for instance, molecular techniques or using markers for plant breeding. We started looking at things like gene sequencing and recently gene editing and I think more importantly also new ways of ensuring food safety, microbial improvement in industrial processing and so on and so forth. So we noticed that this bioscience technologies were rapidly advancing and showing a lot of promise for understanding our biodiversity and also improving plant and animal breeding, adding value to primary produce and converting biological waste into useful material. So that was the second thing we observed. Then number three, and very critical indeed, was that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions were causing or are causing climate change. And there is a need to find sustainable solutions and create green businesses of tomorrow. So these three things really inspired us to begin developing what we call sustainable bioeconomies. And we saw enormous opportunities for Eastern African countries to benefit from this revolution in bioscience, given the rich biodiversity that we have in the region, and also a growing pool of talented young people. And of course, we said, we can use this to create sustainable bioeconomies. So that was the key thing. And then the other thing which we recognized and which inspired us to come up with a regional strategy is that the benefits of a sustainable bioeconomy are best realized regionally because of the transboundary nature of bioeconomy and also the cross-sectoral nature of it, and the fact that our countries and communities are interconnected, and we do share similar cultures and similar traditions and so on and so forth. So we thought that the best way to create a sustainable bioeconomy was for all of us in the region to have a shared vision for a sustainable bioeconomy, and therefore the need for this regional strategy. So our regional strategy anchors very well on the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. As the East African community, we also have the Vision 2050. And as Africa, we have what we call the African Union Agenda 2063. And of course, other related regional science and technology policies, and so on and so forth. And this strategy covers the period 2021 until 2030. And we call this the decade of sustainability principles. And the first principle we adhere to so much is environmental sustainability. And then the second one is climate change, adaptation and mitigation. And then we have sustainable production and consumption. So these are like, the sustainable pillars that we have. But the priority themes that we have in the strategy are four. The first one is sustainable agriculture. And of course, the application of science, science-based, innovation-driven kind of agricultural production and agro-processing and all that. But we also have health and well-being, which incorporates issues of energy. And then the fourth one is biologically based industries. So we are looking at bioeconomy giving us industries of tomorrow. So ladies and gentlemen, this is just a brief snapshot of what our strategy is. Maybe I could mention that we have been lucky in the region to have a very progressive regional economic bloc, which is called the East African. And that's where we anchor the strategy that responsible for developing the strategy and also overseeing it. So thank you very much for this opportunity to interact with you, and I look forward for more inspiration from you and also, building collaborations across the regions. Thank you, and back to you, Christian.
Well, Julius, inspiration is not from us, it's coming from you as well. And I found it really fascinating to have had just the talk of Igrazi before, where we had big industrialized region in Europe along the coast with a strong harbor, etc. And then coming to another model, which is having from Ethiopia, Southern Sudan down to Tanzania, completely different cultures, ambientes, but also, let me see, ways of how to cope with the future. And I think you rightly put out that this East African Union model is after the European Union one, the second one in the world. And so we will see to what extent that's going to progress. Again, thank you very much for your very rich contribution. And I also hope very much that with Julius, many people now know who is Mr. Bioeconomy in East African Union, so that you can address to yourself. We now come to Asia, and I'm also extremely happy to announce to you that for the first time we have someone from Indonesia. Indonesia, which has about 60% of the population the European Union has. Many people are underestimating that, what a kind of giant this country, these island villages is. And I'm very happy that Dr. Nur Rahayahu is with us. She is a very, very relevant government official in Bappenas, a legendary ministry in Indonesia for industry, for planning, and also for the developmental development. And there she's the director for the sector of the forestry, conservation, and water resources, all very untrivial fundamentals in a country like Indonesia. She has a doctoral degree from the University of Queensland in Australia on environmental economics. That is also something which is not to be underestimated. And we are very keen on and very eager to learn, what Indonesia, which up to now has not yet a strategy, Malaysia and Thailand, the neighboring countries in the north, do have it, what you are going to do, and in particular the role of the tropical forests, very similar to Africa and to Amazonia, might play there. Dear Dr. Nur, you have the floor, and we are very happy to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Christian. Good afternoon, I think, in Brazil, but it's already at night in Indonesia. Greeting from Indonesia, Assalamualaikum, and I would like to share my screen, the presentation about my work on the bioeconomy based on the forestry sector. You may know that, please let me share screen. Wait a minute. So, there's this in as Christian mentioned, that I'm working in the Ministry of National Development Planning, or you can call us Bappenas, and I'm working in the this agency for more than 20 years. And now I'm in charge for the forestry sectors and also the conservation of water resources. And in terms of the bioeconomy as national level, Indonesia maybe not yet have the regulation, and of course there's not yet like the action plan on the bioeconomy. But we have already consideration on the bioeconomy from the forest base. As you may know, that Indonesia is in the tropical countries. We have in the equator line, and then we have about 187 million hectares of the area of the terrestrial area, and then from that we have already allocated about 120 million in terrestrial as the state forest area. So in the state forest area, we have the conservation of forests, called in the purple colors, and also we have protection of forest and a production forest. So it's different conservation forest is more on to protect in the on the biodiversity but for the protection of forest more to protect the watershed. So it's quite a bit different. And the conservation forest, we the utilization is very limited, only for the ecosystem services and the bioprospecting, but we really protect the biodiversity in that. But the protection forest we can utilize for the ecosystem services and also non-timber forest products. And then we have the production forest. We have more than 60 million hectares for the production forest, and then used for timber and non-timber forest products. Of course, this is very important because about 63% of the state forest area, and then the population of Indonesia itself about more than 250 million. And then it's very important, the forest sector to support the livelihood and support the economy. Unfortunately, about 34 million hectares of the state forest area is now unforested. So we, if you, months ago, we did the questionnaires to the industries, and what we got, the response is that in the wood-based industries, there's some of the like more on the conventional products such as the pulp and paper and tissue, plywood, furniture, and sound wood, and not yet come out any different set of the products. But then when we ask what the obstacles in developing wood forest industry at now, so the production cost still high, and the technology low, still low. Some of the technology in the plants is obsolete, and then the regulation that are counterproductive with the forest industry. So it's not supporting the forest industry, especially for wood. We have of course the policy on the non-timber forest products, but the wood or the timber forest product is very important for us to support the domestic demand as well, especially for the export. And what we have right now, because in 2045 it's very important for Indonesia to celebrate as it mark our 100 Independence Day. So we have already like this is big milestones. For the 2030, we have already developed the forest-based bioeconomy. So from right now, since look like it's still 9 years from now, but actually we start from like the because we still have facing some problem. So we start with the forestry 4.0 precondition for the utilizing the state forest area, and then we can develop the forest-based bioeconomy. So until 2045, so we can have the forest resource for food, energy, and water supply. But the problem is we actually, with the bioeconomy, we have lots of potential for this. Indonesia, because it's tropical forest, we have different types of plants, and then from plants we have the woody trees, we have the fibrous plants, we have the oily plants. So with the woody, we can have before only for the structural products, something like that for paper, but we can also have now the energy, chemicals, textile, and also with the fibrous plants like cellulosic, we have can have like bioethanol, biofuel, and also with the oily plants, we have the biodiesel, biocultural, chemicals, and we have this some kinds of plants that woody trees that produce oils and have added values other than oil and economically cultivated. So we can still have the plants, we rehabilitate the critical land with these plants without cutting the woods, but we can still get the oil from this. Some of these plants, we have the tamano oil, Inophyllum, already planted and already researched. So we have the oil, but the scale of the economy is still low. So we need to have more area for this. But this is good for bioenergy, and now because the scale of the economy is used for the medicine or the cosmetic. And another potential is the retail fiber. We have one pulp and paper company, the Rio Andalan pulp and paper, we call it Apple. They already have the line that utilize from pulp and then produce the rayon, viscose rayon. So this is the renewable fibers from eucalyptus and acacia. The plantation is in Rio, in Sumatra, Indonesia. And they have already final products, fabrics, textile, and this product. Of course, for the next, because we are still thinking how bioeconomy can also contribute to the Indonesian development, is from the industrial productivity perspective. We have quite, this is the wrap up from all. First, of course, with the downstream, we have the forest area, and then improve the productivity from the forest area. And then from this, we have the downstream. We have to support the industry, forest product, and of course, the forest diversification. I think one of the bioeconomy in this part, the product diversification, we right now started with the rayon, but then we need to do more on that. But another part, like the chemical material of the energy, we still behind what the target as well for the renewable energy from the product. So the other is the we support from the integrating downstream and with the regulation, with the certifications, and also with from technology actually. But we need to improve this productivity. That's, I think, for a short information about the, our works to support the bioeconomy. So this is the forest in Indonesia, the tropical forest, and you can see the orangutan still living in. I send to Christian. Thank you very much.
Well, Dr. Noor, thank you very much. This was as well very rich. And I'm sure for many, many people also in Latin America, rather than you also by all means in Europe, I only want to add that in particular, this April company is extremely active and is building one of the biggest biorefineries in the world already in your country. And that is something which many people also are not aware of. So I wish you all the very best in the elaboration for the future bioeconomy strategy of your country. You will be in best company there. Thank you very much. And we now come to Marisa da Silva. She is the only one of our small group who has, well, dared to go to Belém, and she's on the spot, and she's going to have the floor now from Portugal. Marisa is a chemical engineer and also a sanitary engineer, and she had a lot of functions in the government of Portugal. She was advisor to the ocean minister once, and lately she was the advisor to the Portuguese Minister of the Environment, who has been the lead agency for the new bioeconomy action plan of Portugal under the presidency Portugal had in the European Commission in the first half of this year. So Marisa, I'm very happy. I thank you very much that you were really defending our destiny to be present on the spot that you had now the floor.
Thank you, Christian. I want to ask for my presentation, if it's possible, please.
Well.
Okay. So let me start by saying that it is a pleasure to be in Belém and to be part of this important event. So Portugal has a strong primary sectors that contribute a lot for the economy, the national economy. Actually, this topic, the bioeconomy, has been addressed in several documents and action plan already. In 2019, the government published the National Plan for the Promotion of Biorefineries with the focus on the use of the biomass to produce energy. In 2019, there was a very interesting private initiative dedicated to the blue economy. As you know, the relation between Portugal and the blue environment is very important and holds a great potential for economy model based on the ocean's resource. By the end of 2019, the government decided to develop a national strategy for bioeconomy. So we began to work immediately, and a working group was created to develop these policies. Considering the past documents, we decided to go directly to an action plan. In this way, we believe to be more efficient and to get to results. So the starting point of our task were the three pillars of the European bioeconomy strategy. Our first step was to define the principal guidelines. And with this in mind, we evaluate the value chain, and we did a SWOT analysis to define the main measures necessary in a matrix model. This matrix model with 4 sectors in the horizontal axis and the value chain in the vertical axis. The result was an overview of all measures and clusters that result in 5 pillars. Currently, the action plan is under the law process, and I hope in the next weeks will be published. So now I want to present our plan. The plan will introduce the intervention areas in the coming years, which are composed for the 5 main pillars, as I said before, namely the promotion of sustainable production and use of the biological resources, investments on research and innovation that will contribute definitely for a more circular and a more sustainable bioindustry, the awareness of the society, and also the last area is dedicated to monitoring the plan to understand the boundaries of the use of the bioresources. So this document, in one hand, frames the main measures to accelerate the transition to a sustainable bioeconomy, and on the other hand, defines the investments in 3 sectors under the Resilient and Recover Plan, that is, the European Mechanism for Economic Recovery after pandemic. The main objective is to promote the production of high added value products in order to meet current global and local challenges. And in order to do that, we need reforms, such as the one you can see on timeline present on the slide. Last, I want to say that the interministerial body of governance will monitoring the progress of this action plan implementation. Regarding the Recovery and Resilience Plan, 145 million euros of funding is dedicated to a sustainable bioeconomy. The project scopes will be mostly related to improved technology capabilities in 3 sectors. These 3 sectors, textile and footwear and natural resin, and also to develop key skills in the areas of sustainability, bioeconomy, and the circular economy, I'm sorry. So, and why these 3 sectors? These 3 sectors were chosen because the global fashion industry right now has 40% contribution to the global gas emission, with the most of these emissions occurring with the preparation of the raw materials. More than 60% of the fabrics is made from plastic, which is one of the main contributors to microplastics to the ocean. On the other hand, these sectors are very relevant in the Portuguese economy. Regarding the natural resin, Portugal has been one of the main producers. This sector has shown an extreme decrease in the last years due to the import of cheap fossil-based resins, and also because of the forest fires. So the investments will ensure the development of new products, new business models, and new processes, with lower environmental impact by the use of sustainable feedstocks, implementation of the territorial solutions, and also by the use of best available techniques. And how to make it happen? This will be an integrated and holistic approach, and investments will be run by one consortium for each sector that will join clusters, sector clusters, academy, technological sectors, companies, co-labs. And it will be coordinated by a committee that will ensure a solid coordination and agile articulation between the different bodies and the different governance. Thank you very much.
Well, dear Marisa, this has been wonderful because you showed us another absolutely innovative aspect, that you have dedicatedly looked on the strength of Portugal, on the nation, on their economy, but also being able to put it into a larger context. Wonderful that the local element has come out so clear, and you have another step done. You jumped over a national strategy and immediately went very concretely to an action plan. That's an interesting model. Querido Arturo, should we try it again, please? Because, I cannot leave you home, as the only neighboring country being present here from Brazil. So should we try again?
Yes, we will.
Oh, wonderful. We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I will share the screen. So please confirm.
Yes, we can do it. Yes. Yeah.
So thank you for the technical complication. So, as I was saying, we are addressing this bioeconomy mission, addressing 5 different challenges. Each challenge is related to one particular strategic area. These challenges include the use of continental and oceanic biodiversity. We have 2 oceans, so that's great. But we need to use those resources in a sustainable way and use it to promote the development of the country. The other challenge is Intelligent Colombia that understands and sophisticates the use of biodiversity. And we want to use we want not only to generate the information on biodiversity, even to a molecular level, but to use that information, modern tools like artificial intelligence, in order to generate new bioproducts, new services, and to make better decisions on the way we use our resources. Productive and sustainable agriculture to build social fabric. We want to use, Colombia is a traditionally agricultural country. We want to improve the living conditions of the people living in the rural areas, but also to promote more sustainable practices that will lead to increasing the production in the countryside, but also improving the living conditions of the people living there. Biomass 100, more value, zero waste. With this challenge, we want to address those issues related to what sometimes considered waste, but actually can offer new opportunities to generate new bioproducts, for example, to generate biofuels and other products from what sometimes is just thrown away. Advanced technologies for the health and well-being of Colombians. With this challenge, we want to try to solve some public health problems we have in Colombia that cost a lot of money, that affect a lot of people, using advanced technologies. And in this way also to, of course, reduce the impact of the public health system, but make a better use of the resources we have. In this challenge, we want to move forward with health biotechnology to generate new bioproducts, for example, particularly phytotherapeutics, and better food for the people, among other things. There are two axes that are like cross-sectional: governance and regionalization. We need to work on governance in different levels, like national to the local. Regionalization, we want to work with the regions. At the end, this bioeconomy strategy is designed for the regions, using the resources in each region, and also the capacities. Of course, this bioeconomy mission is not cheap. We need to work on incentives, funding opportunities, and investment around bioeconomy initiatives. We have some ambitious goals. We expect that by 2030, the bioeconomy contributes to 10% of the GDP, also to create about 2.5 million new job positions in different degrees of qualifications by 2030. Also support all the 32 departments, which are the equivalent to states in other countries, and also the Bogota district, capital district, in the development and consolidation of bioeconomy value chains for new products and also clusters. And we aim to work on about 500 bioproducts that include active ingredients, bioproducts in different commercial stages, and extensions of registries to new and national and international markets. Of course, we cannot do this alone. Just the government. We need to work with regional and local governments, with universities, research centers, and institutes, research groups, technology development centers, technology transfer offices, startups, some other companies like those that build machinery, equipment, the chambers of commerce, because they work with way better in the regions with the productive sector than we can do from, for example, my position. So also accelerators, consultancy agencies. Also, of course, we need the entities in charge of financing some initiatives, like government entities, banks, investors, international cooperation, and others. We prioritize 6 sectors within the bioeconomy mission: energy, food, health, chemistry, agriculture, and tourism. This is based on some consultancy work and a lot of conversations based on the potential growth of these sectors over the next 10 years. And this is the final message. This is our country's commitment, where knowledge, science, biodiversity, and biomass converge and become a powerful force for economic growth and social and sustainable development. for Colombia and for its regions. In that QR code, you can actually download the general outline of the bioeconomy mission. Is in Spanish, and this is my email, so you can contact me anytime. So thank you.
Well, thank you, dear Arturo. I'm very happy that I was insisting on at least a few minutes to be given to you to enrich us with the experiences of neighboring Colombia. And what I find extremely interesting is that although Colombia is also part of Amazonia, you know, with a very strong forest part, you also very strongly put the fingers on the blue bioeconomy. And that is something which I think hasn't been mentioned at all, you know, here in Amazonia. Amazonia and water, Amazonia and the blue element, that's something I strongly recommend to our Brazilian friends to think about as well. And I think that is also extremely interesting if you look on Indonesia, you know, this island archipelagos, you know, with I don't know how many thousands of islands you have, you know, where the blue part, in addition to the forestry and wood and the fiber part, if I may say so, is also very important. Now, time is running out. We will unfortunately have to shorten our meeting a little. And in spite of the few questions which I have asked my colleagues to think about, I just want to tell to our international audience, we were very carefully preparing this meeting. I'm going to concentrate on two questions in our brief discussion following now. And the first question I'd like to talk to you and ask every one of you, each of you, is what was the main obstacle you found in your work, and to what extent would you think you were able to overcome? So that would be my question, and I'm going to start to Julius, because he was having the by far largest, if I may say so, radius on activities. What would you say?
Thank you, Christian. I think from our perspective, the biggest obstacle we got is, you know, in trying to get all different groups together. The way things are structured, you know, in this part of the world, we have sectors. So you have environment, you have agriculture, you have industry, you have education, and so on and so forth. So the question for us was, how do we conceptualize bioeconomy as a cross-sectoral, cross-cutting issue for all of us? So in developing the strategy then, we had to debate whether we go the line of sectors or we say, you know, let's focus on more synergies, building synergies. Because when you're developing something like a biopharmaceutical, for instance, the environment is there, agriculture is there, economy is there, industry is there. So that is one thing that we had, the challenge we had. But through consultations, extensive consultations in the different countries and also regionally, over a period of about 2 years, we were able to agree on those 4 key themes that I mentioned to you.
Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Dr. Noor, what would you say? Where do you see at this moment the biggest obstacle for your efforts?
Okay. First, what Julia said is also correct. You said also before that Indonesia have the archipelagic country, so we have the terrestrials and also the marine areas. But because my work is on the terrestrial area, I'm talking about this only. But in the Bapanas, I'm responsible for the overall forestry sectors and forestry development. And most of my partners, the concept of forest-based bioeconomy itself is still new, even within the government circle. We started to learn more of it and include Indonesian stakeholders in this discussion. So of course, this bioeconomy forum is a good opportunity to gather information and knowledge to be shared in Indonesia. We thereby also would like to signal to the esteemed participants in this conference that Indonesia is open for partnerships in the bioeconomy and is welcoming interested parties, including the private sectors, to engage with us. New omnibus law, we have the law just released, the omnibus law, has regularly improved the investment and looking forward also building back better after the pandemic. We have the green recovery programs, of course, is support what the bioeconomy needs.
Okay. Arturo, what would you say in this process of 2 years of working out your strategy? You know, what has been the biggest obstacle? How did you overcome?
Well, I wouldn't call it an obstacle. It was more like a challenge that eventually we are addressing. Is getting to make agreements with different organizations, different entities, even within the government. Sometimes it is difficult to get to an agreement, but eventually we find the ways to do it. It's been a really good lesson. For example, we learn when to talk to some organizations or ministry, for example, alone, or when to talk with a group of them. So it's a really good lesson that is not only useful for the bioeconomy mission, but also for other missions that are being currently built by the ministry and by the government. So it's a big, like a nice challenge, I guess.
Now, what you say, I think, is extremely interesting, because I'm preaching already for long months and years that one of the biggest thing which is so good in the bioeconomy are the so-called side effects, which are difficult to measure. For example, the impact on education, the impact on new ways of funding. We heard a lot on mobilizing private capital. And you know, now the carbon credit system, which we was just enshrined today, is an interesting way, and we will have later on investments also a meeting. So I think these focus on side effects is very important for the bioeconomy. Marissa, you know, you also were jumping from the blue bioeconomy strategy immediately to the action plan. What was the biggest obstacle for you? And then Ignacy.
Beside the long hours of working, being part of the Ministry of Environment and Action Plan and driving this initiative, the biggest difficulty, the biggest obstacle was bringing all government bodies like agriculture, forestry, ocean, economy, science and technology to a common vision. Actually, the matrix model helps a lot because everyone saw themselves reflect in the matrix. But it is fun because it was actually easier to bring the sectors and the industry on board because they sense the consumer options are changing. But on the other hand, it's difficult to compete against the competitive players using the cheap fossil-based supply chains. And I think this will be, in the future, a really difficult obstacle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ignacy.
Well, for us, maybe the first or the biggest difficulty was perhaps to be able to explain why there was a need for a strategy, since there are already many other strategies that are working on the same issues. So we had to explain that we could help to fill the gap, to overcome the overlaps between the other strategy. And maybe the second difficulty or the obstacle was to know how to stop in time and not enter the areas where there are many experts with a greater and better knowledge than the authors of the strategy can have. So to learn from the real experts and try not to supplant those experts.
A very brief question to each of you. Did the pandemic change your work, not for, let me say, because of home office or something like that, but the enormous content on the future and the discussion for the future? Julius.
Thank you, Christian. Yes, the pandemic really had an effect, both positive and negative. But I think let me concentrate on the positive. One is it really underscored the importance of the bioeconomy. So, for instance, we had a lot of ethanol production happening, in using molasses from the sugar companies, and all of a sudden, with the pandemic, these were turned into raw materials for making hand sanitizers. So that was really a plus for us. Then the other one also is in standardizing like herbal remedies, herbal medicines, indigenous communities, and so on. So this was also a plus. But then one thing that helped us also with the pandemic is we could expand the scope of bioeconomy to include, public health as a vital component of this bioeconomy. So that's why in our strategy, we have health and well-being as one of the strong themes in there. And then lastly was the integration with the digital economy. Because we said, the major drivers will be, the digitalization and then the bioeconomy. So those two really played positively to our efforts.
Well, thank you. Very interesting. Dr. Noor?
Okay. Yeah, it's also the same with the pandemic. We have, pandemic has affected all sectors, including forestry. In the industry, there's the decrease in the demand of the wood products. However, there also is a blessing in disguise for the biodiversity to recover as the intervention of the human was reduced. So we can see more like the animals and it's quite
okay.
But then also we have like also source that produces from forestry have contribution in supporting the human systems. We have some herbs, and then because the production of these herbs still in the traditional way, so we are very much interested in food research, marketing of herbal medicines from the forestry, like by prospecting and then for the long term as part of the bioeconomy.
Okay, thank you. Marisa, what about you?
I think this is not new for anyone, and the pandemic came to highlight that the loss of biodiversity in the process of global change are indeed the greatest challenge for the 21st century. And because of that, the pandemic has influenced the plan's outcome and how we approach it. The pandemic also surfaced instability of the global logistics, making us focus more on local supply chain, leading to a more resilient country. Above all, we decided that all investments need to contribute to stop the loss of biodiversity and preserve natural resources in order to have healthy ecosystems and promote human well-being, first of all. Thank you.
I thank you. Arturo.
Well, I think in the case of Colombia applies a lot of the things that have been said so far. But well, to highlight some things, the bioeconomy mission has a great deal of content that is based on some recommendations issued by the Commission of Experts that was convened by the Colombian government in 2019, and that was pre-pandemic. So after the pandemic started, we started also having some discussions on some issues like the biotechnological independence of the country. We need to work a lot on creating some technological independence for Colombia. just to address the production of some vaccine, for example, and some products, and also the discussion on the consequences of losing our biodiversity, as he said before. Logistics is a really big issue now.
Well, we can't hear you now. We can't hear you anymore. Okay, then I switch over to
just to highlight. Okay, just to highlight something within the discussions, we talk about the some topics within the health and well-being strategic area, and also we use the consequences of the pandemic in your favor, like using all the virtual meetings to make agreements with some other entities, with some other organization. That was a good thing that we actually managed to use in your favor, and you worked a lot.
Okay, Ignazi?
Yes, of course, I fully agree with all my colleagues. For us, the pandemic, I think that the pandemic has helped us to visualize the importance of more local forms of production, the importance, of reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. So I think that the pandemic has helped us to build our strategy, and even it has been easier for us to contact all the people, because all the stakeholders were more prepared to talk about this during the pandemic.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, last question. Then we finish. Just give me one or two phrases as an answer. There are a lot of people around, hundreds of them online and hundreds in Belém, and many of them are being engaged in local, regional, or national activities to prepare, well, new instruments to push from the regional strategy to a roadmap. What would be your recommendation to these people with respect to future bioeconomy strategies to be worked on? Julius, you're again the first.
Thank you, Christian. And I think two things I would mention. One is, as we've seen now, bioeconomy really is the future for us to have a sustainable planet. And to build these strategies, what I really advise is collaborations and partnerships. This is key. And we need to bring in, different sectors, academia, government, industry, communities, and so on. So if we have this, then we can truly have a shared vision for a sustainable bioeconomy.
Thank you. Dr. Noor.
Okay, thank you. I think this session team, we have the planet that we share for our living. So we need to support, and then how we utilize this wisely, and then again, this biological justice will support us for living. And then starting, because also working in the policy government, and we need the strong policies from all of us, and then put in a strong action plans, and then we can work together to achieve the target that we set together.
Thank you. Thank you. Ignazi, so that you're not always the last one.
Thank you, Christian. 3 sentences. The first one is try to find and fill the gaps, trying to find and solve the overlaps, and never stop of asking those who really know. Never stop of asking the experts, and try to make the experts participate in your strategies.
This was traditional wisdom. Thank you very much. Marisa.
Cooperation between everyone, all stakeholders, and to bring them to a holistic vision. So both vertical, like value chain from the raw material until the market include the qualification and consumer awareness is important, and horizontal, different government bodies to be involved in the throughout process, design process, and which this worked really well with our plan and approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Arturo, tienes la última palabra.
Thank you, Christian. Well, I have some different recommendations. Be patient. It's a long process. Takes time. Be practical. Also, don't overthink things. Find the common things with your allies and then propose new things. And also choose when to talk one by one to your allies and when to gather all of them to consolidate the individual agreements.
Well, dear friends and colleagues, dear members of the audience worldwide, wherever you are, at whatever time you are, either in the night or just in the morning, this was our first session. And I hope you got not only, I used to say that frequently, food for thought, but wood for thought. In particular, our friends in Brazil, they have a tremendous work in front of them. And because so many different parts of Amazonia itself seems to be a continent, you know, this is a true challenge. Maybe, I hope that you learned a little from the different experiences over here from all parts of the world. And it's not the question to copy them, but to cope with them so that we have a better feeling in the end. All right. We cope with that, we say yes, or we say no, or we say both. So I very much think that also on the other hand, the rest of Amazonia and the world has learned that we must enrich the global narratives of the bioeconomy by health, by biodiversity, by well-being, and also much more on if it's available indigenous knowledge, which will be difficult in Europe, but maybe gives us a tremendous treasure of new knowledge from Africa, from Asia, and Latin America. And with that, I wish our Brazilian friends bon appetit, because you and I have time to go for lunch. I myself will have a snack, others might just have a drink, and I give the floor back to Teresa. And I thank all my panelists very, very much for the contributions, the patience, and thanks to the technical people.
Thank you, Christian. Let's give a round of applause, in particularly to Marisa, who was a star. She was our star this morning. Thank you to all of you, and I think you just confirmed that the bioeconomy is not about one size fits all. Instead, it is about adapting to national, regional, and local specificities and sharing, learning from each other, sharing. So thank you so much, but we will move now to another world. I think you can go for lunch, which some of you, which is not what we're going to do. And I'll ask Marisa to please go back to the floor. And we go to another world. We will give the opportunity to one startup company who will make the pitch, who will show us its innovation in the bioeconomy. Jonas Cunha represents the Rev Food, which is an edible film made of fruit peels that can extend the exposure time of food in market shelves. So let's listen to Jonas, please. There he is.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Força, Jonas. Força. Nós estamos a ouvir, tenho que falar um pouco mais alto, mas estamos a ouvir. Vá, força.
Tá, vamos lá. Então, olá a todos, eu sou o Jonas Cunha, sou o diretor aqui de uma apaixonada da Unesco e vou liderar Biocultural Food. A gente produzir um produto que tem o objetivo de reduzir o desperdício de alimentos. Então, no próximo slide, a gente tem um problema principal que está relacionado com o agronegócio. Então, hoje, o agronegócio representa cerca de 30% do PIB brasileiro. Porém, cerca de 40% de tudo que é plantado é desperdiçado. No próximo slide, falando em números, cerca de 26 milhões de toneladas de alimentos são produzidos, são descartados todos os anos aqui no Brasil.
The sound is not very good, but I'll do my best. 26.3 million tons of food is discarded, is waste. 19 million Brazilians are in a state of hunger. The solution is to use the skins of fruits. It's called Rev food.
No próximo slide, essa substância que a gente utiliza no nosso produto é completamente seguro para o consumo e sendo autorizado.
The solution is Rev food, which is very safe to eat. It's made with the peels of fruits. So this is a tomato without Rev food and the tomato with Rev food.
Esses resultados que a gente conseguiu com esse fruto e com alguns outros, eles só são possíveis graças a
something that we obtained. Organic additives of Amazon origin. It is antimicrobial, antioxidant, and humidifiers. Well, first it's used in the distribution of fruit and for agricultures, farmers, and the people, forest people that collect fruit. So it is the potential clients, the distributors of fruit, farmers, and fruit collectors. And it can go from the Amazon to other states as well. This is the business model. And this is very important. Our clients and our suppliers and there is the sale and then the project, and it has a potential of 7 billion a year. Then there's the processing, and it starts, the circle goes with beginning with the raw material, and it gives an extra income to the people that work with this. So the future perspectives are eatable fruit skins, strategically important for the Pará economy, the state of Pará. So we needed the development, a business plan, and the validation. We have 3 partners. Well, there's a big demand of food in the world. We can produce by 2030 2.9 billion tons of, and at the moment it's 2.2 billion. We can go to 2.9 billion. Well, this is what I had to tell you. I'm sorry, the sound was very bad. The interpreter apologizes. Well, Jonas, congratulations and good luck. Thank you so much for participating in the bioeconomy. We're now going to have a 15-minute break.